particular moment in time. Okay. So does this let you know that this is going to be a pull model or a push model, do we think?
Push.
Okay, get one vote for push.
I think push too.
Push.
Yeah, except that here, we're expecting the observers to call the get state, right? If there's a get method on the subject side, I bet if we look at the observer, we're going to see that the update doesn't have anything in it, right? So because there's no information sent in the update, the observer has to turn around and call get state. They are pulling the data. So this is a pull model, okay? The update doesn't take any information with it. Instead, the observers ask for the data when they're ready for it. They are pulling it from the subject. Yeah, Ben?
That makes sense, but then there's notify all observers.
But that's just sending out the fact that there is data. That's nothing else, right? When it sends this, it's literally sending a message that has no context. It's just, hey guys, there's some updates. That's it.
Okay, and then there's no parameter because there's only one subject, right?
Right. There's no need to send the subject as a parameter, and there's no other data, because if this were a push model, this would have to actually have some parameters.
Oh, okay.
Or actually, it would have to have some returns, right? Or sorry, no parameters in this case. They would have to send data in here. So we'd have to modify this and put the data that we're sending here in the interface. Okay.
Yep.
So here we're putting it all on the pull side. So in this case, it's just one piece of data, but we've made this a pull model just as an example. But you certainly could make it the other way if you wanted to. It doesn't. You know, it's not a big deal in this because only one piece of data is being passed either way. And no subject, because there really isn't a need. This is a one subject model. By the way, the presence of the subject doesn't make it a push model even so, right? That's just identification that says, oh yeah, by the way, it's me, right? I'm sending you the thing. It's not some other subject. It's messages coming from me, because they might need that to go get the message, right? They might need to know who to go poll for that information. Okay. So that's it for those. Let's go look at the concrete implementers, right? So what do we have in here, right? So here we go. This implements the subject one. Here's our list of observers, right? We have the get state, which returns the one thing that the state involves. I have some way, because this thing doesn't have any real interface with sensors or the rest of the world, I'm just going to have a method where I can say, hey, set your state so that it goes and gets the current time from the system, and then it's going to notify all observers that something interesting has happened. If you want to be attached, I will add you to the list. If you want to be detached or unregister yourself, I will remove you from the list. And then notify observers is just going to go through all of the lists of observers, which is our list up here, and send the update message. That's it. That's all that's in the subject. Okay. Now, in all of these things, we have a whole bunch of different observers set up just for fun. And those things, we have a subject reference, because somebody at the beginning has to actually send us a handshake to tell us what subject, right? The only code that actually knows the actual classes of the two things is going to be main in our case. It could be a GUI, it could be something else, because remember, they could choose these things at runtime. But for our case, notice nowhere in here do we use the word, whatever our subject is called. No class is used here, only the observer interface and the subject interface. So it says, hey, when you instantiate me, just hook me up, right? Just give me the handshake so I know who my subject is that I'm paying attention to right now. And then it turns around and says, okay, I'll remember that. And then attach me. Hey, first thing I want to do is sign up, right? Sign me up. So it says, hey, subject, please attach me to you, right? Call the subject, ask for it to attach, and pass your reference, which is this. Okay, so you're signed yourself up with the subject, okay? And then down here, when I get an update message, right? When I get information that there's new stuff, I'm going to ask the subject to get the state. So tell me that instant of time. That's a time service. I'm going to pull that time from that time service. I'm going to set my particular time zone, and I'm going to print out, just so we have some way to see it, print out the time in Seattle based on that time zone offset. So each of these observers are going to do the same thing, and that's all the code that's in the observers. Okay. Now, what about main? Again, main is the only thing that knows the names of the classes because something has to glue them together. So main knows it, but nobody else has to compile. So we say, hey, here's our subject, we're making a new subject, and then we're instantiating all of these things and actually passing them the subject. Interestingly, look over here. We're not even saving references to those things. How can we not do that? How can we not instantiate the Tokyo observer and the Sydney observer? We're instantiating them, but we're not saving them. So why doesn't the garbage collector come and get them? Somebody loves them, right? As long as they're registered, right? As long as they're registered, the subject actually has a reference to them and knows about them. So that's enough to preserve them. The only reason I put this in here is because I wanted to be able to take it out later. I want to be able to unregister it. And so having a reference to it is kind of convenient, right? But yeah, it's kind of cool that you don't even have to save these things in variables. You don't even need the references. And then literally, sometimes that's all you have to do. But I wrote a little code so that I can have a little keyboard interface and actually show you the fact that every time I do something and I poke it, I can make it set a new time. So really, a lot of times, like in your project, you're kind of done here, right? Like none of this code would be here. You're going to sort of spin all of these things up. Hey, make my GUI, make my display, make my calculation engine for my fractal. And then you're just stopping. Main just spins them up and then sits back. And everything else is all going to happen by magic through the communication of the observer. The user's going to click on buttons in the GUI, and that's going to throw messages. That's going to set things, and then the calculation engine is going to be ready to do its calculation. It's going to let your display know that it's got stuff in it. The display is going to ask for the information. It's going to draw it. All of this magic happens, and all main did was introduce the players. Right? Create the player.